1956 was a big, big year for Elvis. This is another thing that would you'd want to kind of learn about. So 56, you come off the heels of 54 and 55, where he first put the record out on radio, and then he kind of toured around and did some little local gigs and such around, about in 55. But 56 is when they started making him national, making a national name for him, right? So
and he was on more and more radio stations. He was going across the country doing all those tours, TV shows, interviews.
Yeah. He was on the Louisiana Hayride, which was a weekly, started out as a radio show, but eventually became also a television show. So that was very, very popular. He was on that, and 56 was going to be his final year on that, because he started to elevate in popularity, and it kind of didn't really fit the whole hayride theme, the Louisiana Hayride.
He outgrew the Louisiana Hayride. Yeah,
for sure. He did. The first year also, when Colonel Parker became his permanent manager, was in 1956 as well. You talk about, again, put him on the television shows, first on the Dorsey Brothers show that he made his very first appearance on a stage show. Then he had the appearance on, there was Milton Berle, and then there was Steve Allen, where he tried to tame him down and brand the new Elvis Presley that Elvis didn't want any part of. Then you had Ed Sullivan, who didn't even want to put him on initially, but also saw the ratings went through the roof from Milton Berle. Maybe not necessarily in a good way in some cases, but he saw the writing on the wall and thought, well, I got to have this guy on. And then that led to, we're only going to put him on from the waist up. So again, another piece of controversy there that people were just wanting to see.
And then didn't Ed Sullivan say this is a very fine young man?
Now, wait a moment. I wanted to say to Elvis Presley and the country that this is a real, decent, fine boy.
So that reassured parents, because again, like Todd just said, at this time Elvis is getting more popular and more popular. That when Ed Sullivan said, ladies and gentlemen, this is a fine young man, that was kind of like the seal of approval that Elvis.
But that wasn't on the very first show. This was after he had been on a few times, and finally, Ed Sullivan reined him in, or not reined him in, but Ed Sullivan gave him the seal of approval.
Seal of approval.
And at that time, that meant a lot, because the Sullivan Show was super popular. And, they were just looking for, just a confirmation that, hey, it's okay. He's a good apple. So, you had that. First movie comes out, Love Me Tender, 1956, another breakout moment.
Such a good movie.
So now he's a dual threat. He's also an actor. He's also a singer, and a very popular singer as well, too. Actually had pretty good acting chops in Love Me Tender. In fact, those first 4 movies were the best work that he ever did in a movie, in my opinion. His first 2 albums in 1956, the very first one, Elvis Presley, where it's got the photo of him on there and his very first songs, and he's jamming to the guitar, and he's wailing, on stage. I believe that picture was shot in Florida somewhere. And then his second album, just called self-titled Elvis, those 2 albums came out at that time too. So you had that going on as well. Very, very significant stuff, putting him on the map and getting his name out to not only, again, to the country, but starting to get his name recognized around the world once these albums and these movies started coming out.
And the money started coming in.
The money started coming in. Parker takes over and starts, managing everything,
getting the contract starting.
Yep,
and everything.
getting everything there. 1956 also, there's a little bit of a thing here that I want to throw in. There is a book called Elvis 56 by Alfred Wertheimer. I believe that's the name. The book basically is a pictorial of the behind the scenes of Elvis and his early days before really things started to rocket and take off. You had pictures of him on some of these shows, but you had a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You had a lot of personal pictures
Kissing
too.
girls.
Yeah, a lot of his personal stuff. Like Wertheimer would follow him around in his personal life and take a lot of candid snapshot photos. And these photos became very, very popular, and they're very coveted by Elvis fans these days. The reason why I bring this up and say that is also kind of another popular piece of 1956 is because you got those behind the scenes looks that were beyond what the public was seeing at the time. But what made that different is once Parker took over, Wertheimer said that he found out later, and I think he found out after Elvis had passed, that basically all the public rights to anything was going through Parker, and Parker shut all that off. And he shut off access to a lot of the stuff that was behind the scenes. So that is one of the reasons why these these pictures that were taken of Elvis throughout his early days and behind the scenes and of his personal life were so coveted and gave a glimpse to the public of what this guy really was, which lent to his approachable, I'm the everyday kind of guy person.
Sitting there just in his, socks, no shoe, no dress shoes on, just sitting there in his socks after just, performing or cutting a record or something. Just catching his breath.
Yep.
Like you said, those candid behind the scenes photos.
So when those first came out, people were getting a glimpse of this, and they were saying that this guy is just like the rest of them. He was beginning to be a very, very well-known star, eventually a global star, but yet he's a guy who was just everyday guy.
A hardworking guy.
Started like many of them from nothing, and it was making his way up. So yeah.